in the book, I did, as with the three wise women, I tried to get inside the head of Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, of Joanna and Susanna, and 8 different women. In Three Wise Women, I only had 3, but it was good practice for doing these 8. And so the only thing we can rely on for sure always is the scripture. That's the truth about what happened and about who these women were. It's through studying the background and the culture and the scripture and languages and whatever I could get my hands on that helps me fill in the blanks, that this would be consistent with what women probably went through. For example, Luke 8:1-3 is the anchor verse for some of the named women. And in it says the women who traveled with Jesus were many, including Mary called Magdalene, and probably because there were so many Marys, they had to keep her straight. So Mary, who was called Magdalene, and then Joanna, who was the wife of Chusa, the steward of Herod, the absolute enemy. So that would be scary. They lived in the palace, and Chusa was taking care of the entire household or finances of Herod, King Herod. So that was pretty scary. And yet Joanna was cured of either infirmities or, like Mary Magdalene, demon possession, and Jesus got rid of that. And she followed Christ, and she was there through the whole thing, at the crucifixion, at the resurrection. So she was a true follower. And the same true for Susanna, though we know less about her. And Mary Magdalene, we know quite a bit about her. And in fact, she was the first to witness Jesus, the resurrected Christ. These women all were before the men disciples. And when they took the good news to the men, they weren't believed. And that's understandable in that culture. You know, women could not even be witnesses in a court of law, because who would trust what a woman had to say? They were just too flighty. And that's what one of the men said when Mary Magdalene and the others came to the locked room where the disciples were hiding. And they said, that tomb is empty. And later that Christ had resurrected it. And the first response someone said was, oh, they're telling crazy old stories, and didn't believe them. What that must have felt like. But Jesus chose them to be witnesses, his first witnesses, even though they would have less standing to be believed than everybody else, pretty much. He chose them, and I can't get over that. And so then we get to have Salome, who has her own story. That, remember, James and John were her sons, and she asked Jesus, and this was in the end of the ministry. He had just told them that they're going to Jerusalem, that he would be tortured and arrested and put to death. And right after that is in the scriptures where she asked, so is it okay if my sons have the place on the right and the left of you in your kingdom? And I mean, that was a big ask. And he said, ask the boys if they were willing. And they said, oh yeah, we're willing to drink the cup that you're drinking. And then he says the last will be first and the first will be last. And she was so probably devastated and embarrassed that she left. But she came back, and she was at the crucifixion. And one of the last ones there, she was one of the first ones to go to the empty tomb and at the resurrection to see Christ. So her heart changed again. I think we can identify with that. I do have questions at the end of every chapter that hope to draw readers into what it really means and how we can connect. I think we've all asked things, big things for ourselves, for the wrong motives, or for our kids for the wrong motives also, instead of waiting on Christ.